All right, it says we are now live.
Okay.
My apologies for the delay.
I'm gonna grab some water.
Re-ask the questions. Try to focus our answers.
One of my friends. Oh, you like the pagers? Yeah.
It is now live.
Oh, really? You're in my household. You've known me for 7 years. What? You thought I lived in New Jersey, didn't you? That's what happened. You thought I lived in New Jersey. You've known me for 7 years. How could you not think I lived in Massachusetts while you lived there?
All right, she says she can see you guys.
Yay!
Asked if you can hear.
So I'm the master at arts. I get to
Yes.
smack people around.
Yes. Yes.
All right. I just want to clarify our
Yeah.
So everyone has heard it on video.
Okay. They can see. They can hear. Sorry about the delay. Colin is a god. Okay.
Hey, he's the Baron of Carolingia.
He is a Baron of Carolingia, that is just implied, by the divine right of barons.
That's right.
That's totally how that works. Yeah. Sure. Sure. Does anybody have any other questions? Hannah. Okay. Can you do a quick intro for the 3 people who are watching? We love you guys.
Alright, so I'm Alana. This is Isabel. We've been in Carolingia for about 6 years now. We were in Quincadia before that, and been in the SCA overall about 18 years. And I would say our main things that we do are equestrian and throw weapons, but also ANS and archery and newcomer nights and really anything else that gets proposed, we're in for trying it out.
You covered all the things this time.
I did. I thought we were trying to do that.
Okay, so we'll pass it along. I'm Isabel. She covered everything else.
I'm Cassandra. I've been in the SCA for 20 mobile years. I have lived here and I did freehold. I do ANS stuff. I do Middle Eastern dance. I do sous chef unprofessionally. It's Fergus and speaking now.
Not Fergus. I'm Zalane. I've lived in Carolingia about 20 years. I mostly cook and fence and hunt, but I also do lots of other random things in a dabbly way.
I'm Rosia. Started in the mid, started heavy fighter. And I've done photography, and I do a lot of arts and science work. Oh, I'm also the seneschal of national.
I'm Thomas. I'm a fencer and sometimes autocrat and sometimes doer of random tasks. That's pretty much it.
This is for everyone. Think about your predecessors as Baron and Baronesses of Carolingia, the ones you've served under, maybe the ones you've heard about. Who do you admire and most want to emulate and why?
Okay. That's right.
Okay. So we've been here for the last 2 sets of Baron and Baronesses. Unfortunately, I don't have any more to draw from that. I really liked the energy that Fergus, Gaius, and Baradi brought in. I've heard it was not entirely family friendly. I would like to take that sort of energy and make it more inclusive.
So, yeah, I'm drawing all of my inspirations from kind of all over the place, just by virtue of also my job requires me to travel a lot. So, the things that I want to draw best from are the caring and attentiveness that like Colin and Nicolette have for just listening to everybody and getting things done in the background of that way. I liked the energy that Fergus and Barabi had when they came in and tried to really just give a shot of adrenaline to some things that while I didn't see them, some people were saying that things were a little stagnant before that. And otherwise, we have other people that we drew from as influences from the mid, like in the Barony of Plains Britain and Dayton, Ohio, the very first Baron and Baroness I ever had the privilege of being a champion for was Nico and Sophia. And they were just the bottomless pit of energy and enthusiasm and positivity. And that's one of the main things I want to try and capture and bring to the job. They were the ones who told me the phrase that the main job of Landed Barony is to be the cheerleader for your people, even if they're too tired to cheer for themselves. So that's the biggest inspiration that I'm trying to draw from.
So, couldn't really pick one of the, I think, 5 sets of Baronial heads as the ones that I would want to emulate. I think they all have great qualities. I have to say I'm friends with most of them. I didn't know Patri very well, but he cast a very long shadow. But when I started here, Joanna and Aqua were Baron and Baroness, and within 2 minutes of me coming to my first event, Joanna had appeared out of nowhere, introduced herself, started telling me all sorts of great things about the barony, and was just the most welcoming possible person. And on top of that, I remember both of them making a very strong effort to go around to all the different activities that happened in Carolingia. Not every time they met, but as often as they could manage to fit it into their schedules, just to see what was going on and to encourage all the things that were happening. So those are both things that I would definitely say.
I would add that I remember very fondly Sean's commitment to sort of bringing history into everything he did while he was Baron. There was often his manner, but also his choices and how he did things and tokens and everything he did tied back to his persona, and I found that very inspiring. And of course, Joanna is just the most welcoming person in the world, so I would hope that I could be a lieutenant of the welcoming that she is.
I would have to echo that I think what was most inspiring for me was Joanna and Aqua and their sense of hospitality that they brought to the barony. They were willing to take anyone in and help them with what they needed. They were willing to make everyone feel welcome and like they had a place. And those are things that are very important to me. And I think even throughout this process, they were willing to mentor and speak to all of us over what they had learned and what they would like to pass on.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think they've been helpful and supportive of everything and continue to be for everyone, all the candidates as well as just anyone that they need in Barony. But the other thing that I really appreciate that I've seen lately is Nicolette's way of being so enthusiastic and appreciative of everything that anyone does in the Barony, whether that's an A&S project or wanting to learn something or making something for the Barony. She's just always very sweet and kind and enthusiastic in her praise and her thanks of anyone's time and effort and service. And I definitely think that that's a valuable thing for every activity in the Barony to be able to get the appreciation of the Baron and Baroness.
Other questions? No, it's gonna be real short.
I have a question from the home viewing audience. The question is, a Baron or Baroness has a blank slate on which to create moments that inspire others, and a position to inspire people to build a thing that is bigger than one person for the Barony. How would you create your own moments or provide the inspiration for others?
So one of the things that I think is the the greatest importance is just participating in every aspect of the barony. So trying to get to every single activity or practice or event on a regular basis so that you know what's going on in the barony and you can be supportive of those activities and know a little bit about the effort that they put into what they love to do. Even though I'm never going to be a heavy weapons fighter, I still want to be able to support that and appreciate that and everything. And I think just having that presence at every activity is really important, and getting to every aspect of the events that we're hosting and the things that Carol and Janice are participating in at events, and then giving a chance for those things to be recognized. So I know we've talked with all of the candidates at points about having more events in Barony, or being able to support people that are interested in holding events. And so if we're having more Baronial events, that's a great opportunity to be able to have more courts that are giving out awards without having to become really long pieces of the event, to just be able to recognize everyone for their efforts in the barony.
And I think alongside of that, something else that would help is to bring more pageantry, more pomp and circumstance to baronial events, baronial gatherings. I think a lot of people really like to get behind having a barony that is decorated and a barony that is proud to be Carolingian. So I think along with going to every activity, we would also be bringing strong Carolingian presence to the group events and group activities.
I found for myself that the most inspiring moments when I look back at them have been quieter moments, when someone comes up to talk to you when you're standing by yourself at an event. You're new or you're waiting for a friend, and someone comes and asks what you're doing or gives you information you can have, or you're just welcoming into the event. Maybe gives you a tiny, shiny object to thank you for coming. You know, something just that says, we're glad you're here, thank you for being here, we would like to see more of you, join the group. And that can be really important when you're new. It is great to have smiling faces waiting for you, as opposed to, I mean, there are huge moments when a lot of pomp it really brings the dream to life. So I think we need to balance those. But I think some of it is just always kind of keeping your eye and your heart open for new people, so that you can make sure they get the attention to know that they are liked.
So I think in terms of building things that are larger than ourselves, a larger thing that a barony can do, and having special SCA specific moments for that. From my perspective, a lot of that is about events, what kind of events we can have. So for instance, a few years ago, Cassandra and I and some friends went down to the Shire of Smoking Rock's 12th night celebration, which was an extremely accurate recreation of what you would do if you were a Saxon and you were trapped inside in the winter. It had all of the silly, ridiculous games that you would play if you were bored there, and it felt incredibly immersive to me. So that's a kind of event that I like, is when you have a very specific time and place and you're recreating all the things that you would do there. But we were actually just talking recently about trying to reach out more to find out what things other people like at events, like what kinds of activities do you want to have, what kind of events do you want to have, and to try to facilitate those things happening. Even if someone's not prepared to be an autocrat, they might have things they're interested in running or have things they'd like to see someone run, and we could talk about those things with people who are running up events.
One of the things I think of when I think about those moments of magic in the SCA is when someone is actually taking the time to get to know me personally and know why it is special for me. I spent the last year as the King's Champion of Arts and Sciences for the Kingdom. And one of the coolest things about my job is I've gotten to know a lot of different artisans who do stuff that I am not remotely interested in doing myself, but I've gotten to understand their passion and what makes them tick in their own fields. And that has been the coolest thing for me. I've gotten to champion for these people, and each one has become like a little project for me now. I know a guy who's doing paper cutting. I know someone who wants to do period hairdressing. And that's what I would like to do with the Barony. I'd like to get to know a lot of individuals. And I know that sounds like it's more work than I will have time to do, and I know it is. But every little bit I can do will matter, because each of the people in our Barony matters, and I need to know that they do. And that is something I can give them. I can give them a piece of largesse. I can ask a heavy fighter to fight for us as a Barony in their hearts, even if they are working, if they're like standing in the line with their household. And that is something we can do. We can connect each and every person in the Barony in some little way. And that's what I would like to do, even if it takes every minute I have working to do that.
Similarly, yeah, I want to create the moments where it's obvious that we are cheerleading for the people. I want to bring those opportunities to help connect people with other like-minded people and get them doing something and help people out with whatever their projects are, whatever their focus is, get them with somebody who matches with them to further their own progress with what they're doing. But other than that, yeah, you've largely covered a lot of the things that I was thinking. So,
Fiore?
Oh, yes, sorry. So this is actually a question for my curiosity. I don't know what kind of persona play you do. If you have a specific period to play in, or you do general SEA, I'm just curious as we're looking for bigger hits for Barony, what's that look like?
Oh, I do. I, Zoana Faber, I am a Milanese gentleman. I was born in 1543 in Milan, and most of my time is spent around northern Italy. These days I spend a lot of time in Veneto, but of course I'll always think of Milan as my home, and I try not to get into too many swashbuckling fights on the streets of Venice, but sometimes these things can't be helped.
Cassandra, today I'm Greek. I came in years ago as a classical Greek, and after taking up the Eastern dance, I have wandered into more of a Greek woman living in Ottoman Turkey, Greek Islands area, late 16th mostly, so I do not appear in ancient garb next to the practically outfitted husband. It's like a sort of a visual problem. And he, as you can tell, is far deeper into persona over time. I have more of a stadium persona, but it's interest in historical stuff. And a small shop.
Just to note, Cassandra makes all of my garb, so if I look nice.
Aww.
Who would like the cow?
I'll take the cow. So I am Isabella de Montreuil-Serner, play 1390s, from France. I joined an English household, so travel a little bit. I am not firm and set in one persona in one time period in one form of garb, so I will change what I'm wearing to cater to the event, but primarily you will find me in late 14th century.
She was wearing a gorgeous, like,
So my persona is 12th century England, because that's probably what most interests me in terms of what was going on in the time and place. But I definitely vary my garb to match the event or match my lady, whatever I feel like wearing that given day. So I have a good bit of 14th century, I have some Viking, and then I also have the 12th century stuff that I really enjoy the research on. But that one gets hung up much more on, I want to make the perfect thing. So I don't have as much garb as some other periods for what technically is my persona, because I always am adding new ideas of what I want to make. And
it evolves into a great project with hand embroidery that will be done at some point, much slower than the other things that I don't put so much detail into everyone. And Isabel also shows a good bit of, especially the 14th century.
So I originally started in the society as a Mongol, and as a heavy fighter, that worked well for me. And I had a very detailed persona. My name was Ogle, and nobody could pronounce that, and it was frustrating. And I was born in 1240. And then I changed my career, we changed kingdoms, and they said to change my name. So I became Razia, because I figured everyone could pronounce that. I looked for a name that was not really Mughal. I wanted something that was a kingdom that the Mongols had conquered, created, and so I went with that. And I thought I was going to get into garb, and then it didn't. And so I kind of had this weird disjunct where my persona started to evolve organically, and now I like to wear Persian during the colder months because you can put on 4 layers of clothing and 4 veils, and you're nice and twisty. And I like to move all Indian in the summer because Tenzing and heat exhaustion is a thing. I'm still very much interested in basically all the non-European cultures because for me those are really interesting. And I made a Russian outfit once, which was made out of this terrible rayon, so I got rid of it. But I did make the entire outfit, hand sewed the whole thing, hand embroidered it, and it was a fun exercise. And I'm willing to play with, personally, anything that's not European because it's different.
So I'm Thomas of Effingham. I picked that because my mundane family is originally from the Barony of Effingham in England. It started all from there, and I knew that I could pronounce that no matter how inebriated I was at Tenzing. I originally started with a lot later period in mind. I wanted to do Elizabethan and like Tudor English, and I wanted to do that so much, and then I figured out I'm really, really bad at sewing. And it turns out that I'm also apparently not too great at being able to even make things with my own dollars. So I have basically come to wearing whatever I can really get a hold of and or make simply. Like I have made a few of the Elizabethan shirts that she showed me how to make. They go under the doublets and everything else. My sword work has started taking me into a direction that is more Italian with studying the Fiore della Barri school of two-handed swordplay, which I'm kind of known for in the fencing community as that guy with the weird two-handed sword. And so I've started trying to do more 14th century garb to match that since it was around slightly earlier than that and around later. But other than that, I also will wear Mongol, especially in the winter, because at first I wanted to match what she was doing, and second, it's comfortable and warm. So those are my big, like, motivating factors, is the directions that I usually take for garb. I sometimes try to match it to the theme of the event that we're going to, if there is one, but other than that, I don't actually like to just limit myself in that way. Like if I find something that's cool and I want to wear it and explore that for like a weekend, I think that's neat. And I like to be able to try and do that.
So a big portion of being Baron and Baroness isn't just within the barony, it's also communicating with the royals and other baronies about us as well and representing us. How do you feel that our kind of standing as a barony is among the greater kingdom, and how do you plan to help represent us in that way?
So, I think right now within the kingdom, because as we've alluded to earlier, we're not holding a lot of kingdom events lately. I think we are not necessarily one of the baronies that royalty are going to turn to as frequently as some of the others. I would definitely like to see that change. I would like to advocate for a stronger role for Carolingia within the kingdom. Both Alana and I, we travel quite a bit. We do like to play at the kingdom level events. We've both been involved in a lot of royal households. We're very used to interacting with the royalty in the kingdom. And I think it would be a good position to come from in order to be able to advocate for Carolina, because I do think it is important not only on a baronial level in order to be able to have more human level events, but also on an individual level, because we are advocating for the people within the barony as well, to see that get recognized and to see that get appreciated within the kingdom as they should be.
Yeah, so definitely like as having been the human cluster champion a couple times, it's good to just have more of a presence around the royals. That not holding too many kingdom events lately, we don't really have at the moment, and so just being more visible and attending more events. If we can add some of the pageantry to that to say, you know, really, we are Carolingia, we are here. Gets it to be really noticeable that we are a pretty big group with a lot of valuable members that contribute a lot to the kingdom, and that we travel to a lot of different places, and a lot of royal progress events is definitely an asset there in terms of being seen by the royals and having access to them to support them.
Yeah, I think that we may have a lower profile as a barony than we used to, but we're still, I believe, in terms of active population, quite large as a fraction, at least of the northern half of the kingdom. There is kind of a northern-southern divide. So I think we're also, as a populace, traveling a lot more to go to events than we used to. We don't have as many events locally. I think maybe we could do more to do activities at out of barony events to indicate that we are a unified group. But I think we probably have a lot of cross-pollination between this barony and other baronies already, and maybe we just need to spend more time talking to our neighboring barons and baronesses and seneschals and shires to see what sort of events we can do together to really build those connections better.
On the kingdom level, I feel that it's really just remembering to be a voice for the people in the barony, because the king and queen don't have a strong opinion about where Carolingia stands on an activity level. We have a lot of people, you know, for one of their groups, if we ask them to look favorably upon someone who lives here, they're going to do that because we're still a barony, no matter how many events we've had this year. Obviously, it would be great if we were more active, if we did more events, and hopefully that will happen. You know, through various means of encouraging autocrats and bringing out the new group of autocrats so we don't burn out all of the valuable people we have actually do events. But yeah, I think it's just remembering to speak for the people when you go somewhere else. That is a big part of it.
So one of the reasons why I got into autocrating is because I started doing some short math in some of my friends' groups and we were writing people in for awards. I personally have been called into court 7 times in the East Kingdom, and only one of those times has been in Carolingia. And I've lived here the entire time that we've been in the East. So I wanted to give the opportunities for people to be called in more that are local, and so that your local friends and people and family could be here to see that and experience that. I think that we do need to start running more events, and I want to start training more people to effectively be autocrats, because we have the additional challenge that real estate out here really expensive. Not easy to get to, and if you can get to it, it's usually you're not able to park a car anywhere near it, which is like the big trade-off. So I think we do need to work on getting autocrats all on the same page and kind of start building up that boot camp and fleshing out that part of the community so we can start putting a little more energy into getting some of that moving.
At a more individual level, having that relationship with a crown is in fact a very personal thing, and for each crown it's very different. I've been through 2 crowns now, and as champion, and it was interesting to see how that relationship changed each time. And when someone comes up and wins, you don't know them, suddenly you get to know them. And I think it's going to become our responsibility as Baron and Baroness, if someone wins crown that we don't know well, to make sure we do get to know them well, because that trust you have with the crown matters so much when you're recommending someone. Yes, they're going to trust you as Baron and Baroness, but if they can personally trust you, you will get so much more accomplished in the barony. Also, there's opportunities in royal rings. When the royals go, we've got a Queen's tea. Oh no, it's last minute. Do you know any servers? We can tap the barony, find people who want to be involved, that they want something to do, and then after we go, look how helpful they are. Did you know we wanted to get them their silver wheel? And that's something that I think we can really work with each reign on. But again, it's such a personal relationship with each crown. It means that if someone who wins that we don't know shows up, we're going to have to get to know them. That is our job. And I think that our connections to the kingdom, because we had primarily played at Kingdom Local. We showed up locally and then played at Kingdom, which was a really weird vibe for me. And that's actually why I'm Seneschal of Ashurst right now, is because I realized, well, the position was offered to me, and I realized that I hadn't played locally, and I wanted to get to know people locally. And so the last 3 years have been great because I have gotten to know that. And I've gotten to know people that like literally live 10 minutes from my house, and now they're my dear friends. So I think what we can do, though, is take those connections we have made, and I think there's a strong likelihood that we're going to have some connection to whoever wins. So.
Seriously, people? Raise your hand higher because your hand like that is behind nonsense.
So if you've been paying attention to SCA news, this is going to sound a little familiar. Hypothetically speaking, you're at a coronation and people come in wearing your swastika trims, and you're the Baron and Baroness of Pyrlogia. What do you do?
Do we need to tackle that one in this context at this moment?
I think it speaks to how they represent the Baron. That's why I asked.
Can we find a different way to ask that question, perhaps, that doesn't involve hate symbols?
Then it's a different question.
I think that it's a universal system. You take up a hate symbol, but still you have somebody being boisterous in court and causing a problem, or somebody coming in threatening another person in the barony. It doesn't always have to be an overt symbol, but there are many ways that you can find somebody in the barony that unfortunately last minute needs to be dealt with. And yes, you have autocrat, you have seneschal, but as Baron and Baroness, I think what Pamela's getting at is, how would you handle that situation?
So I guess my first recourse would always be to try to take somebody aside and have a conversation with them about what was going on and how we could stop whatever the disruptive behavior was. I know that in recent circumstances, there's been a lot of confusion about what intent was and a lot of fiery rhetoric about what the appropriate response was. And I don't know if anybody right at the beginning went and talked to the persons involved and asked them, what do you think you're doing? Why are you doing this? Do you know the implications of this? And I think certainly you have to be prepared to have a stronger response, but you're better off starting with a sane, calm conversation about it.
I think if it's a situation in court where someone's being boisterous, sadly, you're kind of in the same position as a stand-up comic, in that you have to take what is coming in and reflect it in a diffusing way that is perhaps slightly funny, because comedy is not confusing, because I mean, we don't want to be in a situation where you're just standing up and being like, you, out, with a laughing. They just end. But you do want to calm it and keep going, because just because someone is being loud at the moment doesn't mean they're not a person we want to have around. It just maybe they're having an inappropriate moment. I mean, obviously, for more serious offenses, there are procedures in place. We are going to stop them. But it varies on what's happening. What would like to count?
Yeah, so what you're talking about here is there's a variety of different awkward, potentially dangerous and threatening situations. There's a whole lot of things that can happen. Context is king in all of this too. There's a difference between someone walking in wearing a hate symbol and someone who's getting boisterous in court. I think it's important that we evaluate each situation carefully. And yes, also I'm a seneschal, so like my first response is like, no, you start following procedure. There's a procedure for this. But no, as head, you do have to make sure that you're setting a tone. So what I would like to do is, if it is someone on the more extreme end, to explain to them firmly in certain terms that this will not be tolerated, they should take that, they should stop that behavior, or they should, if it's something like someone getting boisterous in court, or maybe using shtick that's not culturally sensitive. Again, bring them aside, explain to them maybe why what they're doing isn't funny for everyone, because sometimes there is an education aspect. There are situations that are grayer areas. Maybe someone has some sort of like cognitive disability where they actually can't see like reactions in other people and understand what that means. So I think we should be careful to understand before we vilify. But when we need to, there's absolutely going to have to be a hard no at the stand at some point. But I think the bigger question is not what we do as a baron and baroness, but there's a secondary effect that happens. And I think it is our job to stop the lynch mob from happening. To let people know that it will be handled at the top level and they do not need to put justice into their own hands. Yes, the seneschal is handling it. She will follow the harassment policy to a T. The bod will be notified, and that it is not their job to participate in that. And if it is, we will let them know when and how to do that. So if someone does have a concern, you can say to them, yes, you should be involved, your voice should be heard. You should write this Kingdom Seneschal right now about this incident, with your perspective and what happened to you. You should write the bod. There are ways to be constructively involved in this process that help it to never happen again without it becoming a fervor.
I would also like to add basically that, and there is also we should face it that we are no longer the organization that is capable of dealing with things kind of behind the woodshed. We're not a substitute for the modern authorities. If someone is in actual danger, sometimes you have to let the seneschal and the modern authorities know, and sometimes that sucks. But that's the world we live in now, and we cannot ignore that no matter what.
So, I think as everybody else has said, it's very context dependent as to what your exact reaction would be in a given scenario. I do not have any tolerance for hateful behavior or behavior that would hurt others. And I very much want to be a person that, regardless of the outcome of this election, people are comfortable saying that something's going on, if they need help, if they want somebody to come have their backs in a scenario. But I think ideally everything would start with a conversation first, where you make sure that everybody involved understood what was going on, understood why it was a problem, and why it needed to stop. And then yes, if things go beyond that, then it's time to employ the policies that are in place in order to take care of that, because it's not something that can be allowed to be fostered with the bag.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I do think that as baronial heads, you have more influence in ways that aren't necessarily spelled out in the policies of just being the person to take that person aside and explain what other people are seeing in their regard or their behavior and see what their intent was and helping them to find a solution to that problem if they really weren't aware that it would cause a problem. And then I think a lot of things need to go from there if they are aware of something inappropriate and immediately would like to correct that, helping them find the resources. Or if they're saying something we don't realize is inappropriate, helping them find the correct channel for what advice or feedback they're trying to express about a situation, so that we don't have the lynch mob going on, and trying to keep everything calm and following the correct procedures, while also being that force for good that people look up to and really want to take your advice and make you happy in terms of finding the appropriate behavior and accepting the guidance that we're hoping would correct any accidental situations. And in terms of situations that aren't accidental, I think we do have a very clear policy for that, and would definitely be following those channels. But starting with the discussion and understanding and hoping to be able to enact the change without it turning into a major situation. Always assuming that there's a positive in what people are doing and they want to make the entire group happy and feel safe and comfortable. I think is a good point to work from, so that things don't blow up more than they should be or is appropriate for the situation.
I have a question from our viewing audience that couldn't get a chat to work on YouTube.
Okay.
I don't know.
As long as I got it to you.
But Erica was wondering about what your support group / household would be.
I'm about to go down. So, household, I'm a member of House Tarragon. I've belonged to House Tarragon for 10 years now. And Tarragon has sort of morphed and changed over the years, but we are still a very strong, very supportive household that I know would absolutely have our back to help us. But more than that, I think we developed a tribe living in Carolina, people in the area. There are people in this room, people not in this room, that would be able to support and help. And it's also important to me, were we to take on this role, that anybody who wanted to help would feel welcome to do so. I have worked on Royal Reigns running the retinue many times, and each time I really like bringing in new people and teaching new people those roles. I would very much like it to be something that people felt they were comfortable coming in saying, hey, that looks like a lot of fun. Can we help you? Do you need help?
Yeah, and it definitely is great to have children helping out as well, being very enthusiastic and helpful retainers, and it's a great thing that kids can really be just as effective as adults in pretty much every situation. And so just in general, we would love to see any Paralympians of any age that would like to participate be able to participate and be part of things to whatever extent they feel works for them and their time and availability. We can be really flexible with that. If there's people that want to try out helping once and see how it goes and never do it again, that's totally workable. If there's people that want to be around us at every single event, then that's workable too. And I'm sure that we'll need people that are in both of those categories and everything in between. But we feel that it's really important to have everyone in the barony be able to participate in that way.
I'm nocturnally in the household. The closest thing we're into one is best described as an anarchist collective, so we do, however, to our great honor, have a large number of friends in the barony who are the closest family that we could reach out to for needs. I think, as any of us who have lived here, it's a very welcoming and wonderful place. And some of the joy, as you were just saying, of having the baronial roles is that young people can be involved. There is a ton of space to get other people more involved, in the barony. And I do hope people will be willing to.
Yeah, I think as Cassandra said, we're not in any household, but there are a lot of very tight social circles that we form over time. The group of people that we camp with are like family. The people that I take the fencing field with are very close and supportive. The ladies that Cassandra dances with every Thursday are a very tight-knit group. And so I think there's a lot of overlapping groups there around Carolingia that would be our support system.
So, which household? I'm currently involved in peripherally attached to 3 households right now. I originally joined House Fairhaven when I was in the mid. You may not know who that is, but Sir William Fairhaven, now Count William Fairhaven, was king of Penzance of the mid last year. He came out for his elevation, he's coming out for mine. I still have very strong ties to that household, and they are actually a resource I can still tap into. I'm still on the household mailing list, and those people are still dear friends of mine. We camp with Sharpit. That's a whole motley assortment of a camping household that's not really a household, but it's definitely a bunch of people that I can go to for resources. And I feel very close to those people, and a lot of them are very local. Also, I am, Princess Keelan is my Rose patron, and I am attached to, not directly in BDK, but I am associated with BDK. And that's given me an inherent other circle of people that I can go to for help, support, and contact outside of things. He was provosted to Sir Antonio, and so we've got a lot of ties down in Jersey. I am currently a princess to Alice McIntosh. So we've got a lot of contacts all over the place, plus the fencing community, we have associated with the Calibers. Lots of people.
Yeah. One of the things that I've always guided my life principles by is that if I can't do something, know somebody who does. And she's pretty much covered that.
Amy, you have a question?
So, both philosophically and on a practical level, what does Carolingia's status as S mean to you?
I have, I think, about 21 years of evolving feelings about that. To me, Carolingia is embodied by a certain mindset and a shared set of values. We may be interested in all sorts of different things, but there's definitely a strong volunteerism, a strong, hyper strong interest in medieval recreation. I think obviously we're in a medieval recreation organization, but here more than other places in the SCA, I think we're a little obsessive about that, which I view as a good thing. When I started, it also meant commonly that anybody who thought of themselves as a Carolingian was a Carolingian. And so I still retain that on some level. We have great friends in Chicago who still think of themselves as Carolingian. Functionally, that's not really the case anymore, but it's still something that I try to hold in the back of my mind, that you could encounter somebody out there who has a Carolingian spark within them, even if they don't technically reside here.
I thought of it really in very philosophical terms until I moved somewhere else and realized to my horror that I indeed was 100% Carolingian. There was nothing I could do about it. Like, you have one meeting a year? How do you make decisions? Why is everyone on their period? I don't want a book about this. But it's funny, it creeps into your core, and then you go back and realize you've been contaminated by the Great North. But now I wonder why we have quite so many meetings. And if really everything needs 3 subcommittees. I know it's not your fault, honey. You do your very best. But no, I like Dawn, I think of it a lot as a deep interest in history. And we may not always all be perfectly well dressed in the kitchen, but well darn it, those recipes, they're correct.
So, not having lived in the Barony for 20 years, history, the that many other people do, but I think it definitely embodies a mentality of believing that you are Carolingian on a philosophical level. On a practical level, I think for me, I've never been one to really pay that close attention to borders in groups. I like playing with other people. I enjoy really great people regardless of where they come from. And so to me, it brings a lot more to Carolingia if you have individuals that don't necessarily reside within our borders, but do feel Carolingian and would like to play with us. I love that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to who people are playing with, if they feel like they're Carolingian. I know some people from Stonemarsh and from Batavia that would say they're Carolingian just because that's the activities they attend, and I would absolutely say that they're part of our group, and there's a lot of things that we would want to include them in if we're presenting gifts to the royals or doing a Carolingian procession or anything like that. Definitely, if they feel they're Carolingian, they should be part of that. If they want to be part of the Baronial staff, they should be part of that. I think really the only thing that we have that's specific to if you're properly in Carolingia is the officers and voting that's required by kingdom law. And I think that potentially that's something that at some point in the future would be nice to see change, but probably won't happen anytime soon. But it's always good to just have Carolingia be that example to the royals of, you know, borders are great, but we really like everyone that plays with us, and we really want to support them. And look, here they are with us in all of these things that they participate, and they are Carolingia.
For me, it's entirely summed up as, so sure you can't live here for whatever reason legally within the boundaries, but you can still play here. Come hang out with us. If you feel like this is where you are and this is where you want to be and we're doing the things you want to do, come on in. And that's pretty much it.
I think this is an interesting moment of anthropology between kingdoms. When we started in the mid, our baronies were very geographically oriented. If you were in Flaming Griffin, you were Flaming Griffin. You were in Middle Marches, you were Middle Marches. And you absolutely were, and everyone let you do that immediately. And that was strong, but I found this to be very refreshing, that you can live in Batavia or Smoking Rocks or wherever, and you still play with Carolingia and still have an identity as being part of this group, which is something that would not happen for us with it. Which, you know, it would be a big deal that they liked me too, because I wasn't Flaming Griffin. And like, they weren't mean, but like, I was a part of that group. It was a very different culture. So what I think about the this Carolingian mentality is not just what it means to me, or what it means to like someone who's been here for a while, but I'm interested in what it means for the new person. What I want to do as Baroness is explain to the new person that you are Carolingian when you feel Carolingian, and try to grow that feeling inside them so they do feel Carolingian, that we can be more inclusive and we can try to nurture that feeling, because I think it is truly it is a great supplement.
All right, Timothy, Breda, David.
Being on the opposite spectrum, I understand that there's a lot of autistics in the SCA, more and more. And I wanted to hear each of them say, this is my life experience of dealing with autistic, or I'm learning, I don't know much. Not respond.
So I can tell you right now, this is not something I've had a lot of experience with. However, a couple of my close friends now deal with autistic people professionally in education. And because of paying attention to their careers,
I've become a lot more aware of the spectrum of people on it, and I've come to realize that there's a lot of people who I might have thought were being rude to me in the past, but in fact are on the autistic spectrum. So what I've tried to take away from that is to be a little more understanding and to like understand that someone may be coming from a perspective where they don't understand the feedback you're giving them because there's a certain social consensus that it may not be there for them. So it's important to maybe ask, and if they tell you, to understand that yes, sometimes you're going to have to tell them in a direct way. Oh, I'm done with this, but thank you for your input. But I think mostly what we can do is just try to be a little more kind and understanding, and to look for those cues that might let us know that maybe this person doesn't even know they're autistic. But I think it is something that we need to become more aware of, because it's challenging, and it's not something that I've not been aware of this, and I think I would have done a lot better if many other social situations had them.
I can think of no situations that can be made worse by more communication usually. I think that it's good to learn more about people on the autism spectrum and what things are generally affected by that. Because up until a few years ago, I didn't know that there were parts of that involved not being able to read facial cues, and people who are like, there's a fencer who I met in the mid who cannot perceive really like hand gestures, and so when you're fighting, if you say I'm good, you have to say it very loud, but if you just do like a tip of the hat or something, he misses it and will kind of keep fighting. There's been a lot of things that have to change, and I think this is going to be one of those things that we do get the opportunity to be better about.
Yeah, it's not something that I have a lot of personal experience with. I have a couple of friends and coworkers that are somewhere on the spectrum, but yeah, I think to echo what Thomas said, more communication is always better. Whether somebody is on the autism spectrum or not, you need to find out what they need out of an interaction and try to just be as open as possible, and try to learn more all the time.
Also, I think looking at what your assumptions are with communication, like we might go into a conversation, assuming background, assuming that we're sharing the same history on something, and whether someone is autistic or not, if they're not coming from the same context that you are, it's not going to make the same amount of sense. So you do need to be willing to, talk around something, think about what you said, explain it in a different way, with anyone in a new situation. It certainly is very helpful if someone tells you they're autistic, because then you think, okay, now I know there's stuff I need to learn, and we can make a better conversation of it.
So my cousin is autistic, just to address the question. I have a limited experience with that. But I think, as everybody else said, the question is broader in that when you're interacting with anybody, I think it's important to figure out the best way that you can communicate with them, figure out what suits their personality and their needs, how you can meet in the middle, be it on the autism spectrum or some other challenge. So I think it's just about being more considerate of others, about paying attention to what everybody needs, and paying attention to whether or not they're understanding what it is you're trying to say.
I think I've had more experience with autistic children than adults, but I definitely know both. I think for me, I've heard a lot of people that can't believe how much benefit of the doubt I give people in a lot of situations. I'm always going to assume the best in anything until I clarify otherwise. And that doesn't mean I'm just going to let people get away with stuff if they are not being socially acceptable for reasons that would activate the harassment and bullying policy instead of just for missing social cues. But I'm always going to be figuring out what the situation is, if they know how they're coming across, if there's something that's weird, if they have anything that is helpful for them. So, yeah, just assuming the best intentions always, like, how can I help you to be the best person you can be who you want to be in the SCA and in life. And so sometimes with kids, that's figuring out how to get them in a calmer, quieter situation. That I'm having to talk to the parents about what works. With adults, fortunately, they can usually convey what they need, but I know it's also possible that adults get into situations where they're already too stressed or overwhelmed, they can't appropriately convey what they need. And I think it's important to just, in your interactions with everyone, find out what works for them and how they best interact. And I think there's a lot of things that have come up with the EK Wiki lately that's been really good indications of more awareness of that in the SCA in general, where if you don't want to be surprised in court because you have anxiety about it, you can put that on the wiki. If there's someone else that is good to talk to about situations where you might be noticed publicly, then you can talk to that person. And just figuring out ways to make it as easy and comfortable for everyone, whether they're autistic or they have anything else, or just they have preferences in their how they interact in the society and things like court. I just try to take all of that into account to make it a pleasant experience.
Jordan? If you could create one new thing in the barony, what would it be?
I started with this. I don't know if you were here, so I'm going to repeat myself. But if you've already heard this, just like do a big thing. Oh, it's late. I just mean, if you've already heard this, stop me. But the one thing I would like to do in the barony is add one more baronial order for little people, for children, because I feel like we have a lot more of them around now in the barony than we started. Because the place we're getting new membership from has changed. I think we have a lot more young families coming in, and I think it would be nice to recognize their input in our society.
Sure, I'll take that. It's not wholly new, but I would like to create more groups that go out and do activities together. We have the calibers that go out in baronial colors together. In the past, we've had the pipe company that goes out together. Right now, we don't have anybody, say, that goes out and shoots archery as a unit, and I would love to see more things like that. We have a company of bowmen, but I don't think very often they move out as a company. And so that and other like things I think would be terrific.
Similar to what Sandra said, I would like to create for children not like a PH program, but something along those lines, a set of tasks they could do for the barony at any local event. We come to them ahead of time, have a coordinator, say these are things you can do. And I don't mean classes or like children's activities, but actual adult activities that are children's sized. If we need like a list runner, that'd be something great, or someone just to like count numbers on cards, that's something they can do. Someone to help set up or take down an ANS display, someone to go check on our water jugs and let us know, let the people who can lift the heavy objects know which ones to refill. These are things that a child can absolutely do and would let them have something to do that would be meaningful and rewarding for them. And yeah, help us out too, because some of us don't want to run around like crazy.
I mean, if we could shoot for the moon here, I would love a traffic obliteration ray. But in the scope, like the realm of things I can actually try and do is one of the things I would like to make is basically like a 12-step box for like, I want to run an event, here's how. Like everything all encompassing, nuts to bolts, start to finish. You want to be an autocrat? Here's your autocrat kit. I want to make that little box happen so that way somebody who has zero experience can actually run a successful event using just this and a little bit of guidance, and I want that for the barony name. I want it to actually be usable, so that's going to be a project. And honestly, that's probably going to be something I'm going to try and build anyway, whether or not we get this. But that's one of the things I want to make.
It's also not entirely new. It's started creating it a little bit, but I would like to see this grow. Is one thing I would like to create. I would like to continue to be able to have gatherings like this and have them in places where we can incorporate more than we can here, because the space is great, but it is still limiting. We cannot do fighting, we cannot do archery, we cannot do throw weapons. So I would like to be able to create those regular meetings where everybody within the barony is able to get together and interact with one another, enjoy each other's company, learn about the other things that are going on, and you have that place that you know that you can go to see the other members of the barony.
I think one thing I'd like to add to Carolingia specifically, but I think is also lacking within the kingdom, is more than just one thing for kids to get in their entire childhood at the SCA. So we have Tiger stuff, it's like you got that and then you wait till you're basically considered an adult and get an AOA. And so creating something that would recognize children not just one time, but for their continuing participation in one activity, growing their skill, or in a variety of activities, branching out and participating in more of the barony so that they can feel like they're a valued member and their participation in everything is an asset to the barony rather than just being something that happens to happen on the side and isn't really recognized and taken notice of the same way as a lot of the adults have for their projects.
Aiden?
Shenanigans. Like, can you talk a little bit about, like, you know, just your thoughts on like where it works, where it doesn't, or maybe you're indifferent about it, but you know, just in terms of like, you know, whatever. Also, if you need a henchman, just say
This is the cow of clarification. When you say shenanigans, can you be a little, are you talking about like shtick, comedy stuff? What, okay.
Yeah.
I don't need to start, I just wanted to make sure we knew what shenanigans meant in this context.
What, improving communication?
I'm a very big fan of the concept of time and place for everything. And so I really do like shtick. I like silliness. I like added comedy, but I do also think that there are occasions where things should be more serious. Sports, I think it's nice to have a mix of both. I think definitely entertainment helps keep things moving a little bit, helps keep people engaged. One of my biggest things though is also, if something is going to transpire and it's something at court, I want it to be something that everybody can understand. I don't like the inside jokes that maybe a handful of people understand and find funny and everybody else is sitting there very confused. And so I definitely, at the right time and place, wholeheartedly endorse shenanigans, but I'd like it to be inclusive that everybody can enjoy it.
I am not one to obviously create shenanigans. I'm one to find an appropriate henchman and yes, I see there's one right there. And plan things behind the scenes to surprise and entertain everyone at the appropriate times. Also, one of the things that I've seen done to a very limited extent lately is find some of the period things that could be granted. So there's a lot of really random rights to things that could be granted by various levels of, you know, barons or royals, I think, that have period descriptions of the details and all of that sound very appropriate in court and mean either
complete shenanigans or essentially nothing relevant, but it's still cool to learn about the history and to be able to have someone in the barony say, I have the exclusive rights to like hunt squirrels in the lawn right outside of this building, and that's what it is. So just bring more of that knowledge of how things were done and really in period descriptions of complete shenanigans so that they fit in with that sort of thing.
I have sat through a lot of royal courts because I think like everyone else here, I've entertained many times. And so I have a nuanced shenanigan opinion. I think you can do anything you want if it doesn't take even 1 extra second on a packed court, because you're taking a pretty time. And I think you shouldn't surprise your herald. In general, that's a thing. So I think with those things said, things that aren't in jokes but that are just genuinely funny or great, jocular tenures are where it is at. They are the funniest thing ever.
Petty sergeants?
Petty sergeants?
Yeah. No, those are terrific. I don't know enough about them. I would love to learn more. I know that Stefan could talk to you for hours and hours about it if you're interested in crazy examples. Yeah, I'm 100% in favor of shenanigans that are, period, actually funny and quick.
So, court, first and foremost, is theater. Court is not just there as this mind-numbing vehicle to convey awards that goes on and on for 3 hours of court. Court should also be a complaint. This means that sometimes shtick and shenanigans and humor are going to be necessary, because if we all had just so serious all the time, it would become oppressive, and it does become oppressive. We've seen a lot of that. I've also seen a lot of times where the crown heads will try to take the shtick on themselves, and sometimes that's successful. But I think there's times where it's also not, and that should be weighed appropriately, because there is a certain gravity to being heads of things. Now that being said, that's more my personality. Someone else might have more of like a jocular nature.
What do you mean?
Yeah. And I think there are some more role there. One of the interesting things, there was a big discussion about court on Facebook a while back. Some of you may have missed it, some of you aren't on Facebook. But one of the big interesting takeaways I found was that people kept asking for things, and one of the things they actually wanted were like jesters and court entertainers. And I think there's been kind of a lack of that, and we could actually do well, because that's a way you could actually entertain within the bounds of period humor. Maybe you could teach someone a good Viking joke, basically. I think, and this also would take some of the pressure off of the crown heads, in this case the baronials, to provide that levity. It is not necessarily their job to, but it is their job to orchestrate that somewhere within the experience of the court. That being said, I want to make sure I would never, ever ruin someone's experience of getting an award by making it be too light. Because I know that if someone joked about the award I was getting, I would be devastated. I would not want that to happen. And then get back to the idea, so a lot more people are putting their UK wiki page together, and it says things in there like, do surprise me, don't surprise me. You can make a joke about it. I think we should try to encourage people to do more of that, so we know when we can take advantage of the times that we could make a joke, and they would be cool with it. In fact, they might think it's the coolest thing ever.
I am very pro shenanigans. Shocking, I know. But yes, no, I do agree with a lot of that. There's a time and a place, but otherwise, I'm all for it and have been an inter-kingdom incident level shenanigator myself. So I have some background.
Can I get a sense of exactly how many questions are left? So I'm going to try and wrap this up in another 10 minutes or so we can get back to the mingling.
Hi, I'm Isabel. I just wanted to ask you what your favorite event has been in your SCA times and why it was your favorite event.
Penzing, easy answer. I mean, Penzic, for lots of reasons, it's a lot easier to be visual and to have an immersive feeling in the dark around a campfire out in the woods. And there's a ton of things going on. It's the biggest event we do. It's a lot less time that you have to go through that mental time frame. Many reasons. Putting Penzic aside, been a couple of events that are sort of on an equal level for me that tend to be very specific to a time and a place. Like the event I mentioned earlier that was the Shire 12th night down in Smoking Rocks, or we did a Yuletide in York event in Carolingia a lot of years ago that was we did a horn dance, and we had a bunch of people doing creative riddles in a riddle contest around the hall, and all these things that were carefully thought out. Not that you had to really think about how to be in that period, just that the event planners had set up enough things that as you wandered around, you would encounter things that made you feel like you were at that time in that place, and that's something that I really treasure.
Obviously, Penzic. So, Stone March did a polio, but for all I know, they still do it. We haven't done it in the last couple of years. But their polio event divvies you up into different teams. You then, at least the year we went, I created a heraldic dress. We had some banners. You are basically brawling against the other teams that are there. There's cheese rolling and barrel racing, and it was pouring rain for days. And it was, they had created such an immersive event. We just had such a great time. I mean, I think that's pomp and circumstance. There were questions. There was just, everything was done with the flavor of the event, and that was great.
So my favorite event is probably Great Northeastern War, because contrary to you guys, Penzic is probably one of my least favorite events. I moved out of Pennsylvania because of the month of August. I don't really like going back. But I like Great Northeastern because of the immersive environment that you get. You have all of the camping environment, you have all of the fighting activities, and falls a large crowd, and any event that tends to end with a bardic circle around a fire sticks out of my mind.
So I would definitely tend to agree with Penzic for all of the reasons that Isabel just said, and I don't mind the weather so much. I definitely far prefer the July, August Pennsylvania weather to the February Massachusetts weather for the most part. But summer definitely has a lot going for it up here when you're wearing garb. Otherwise, I would say that some of my favorite events are Bardic Champs and Crown, because they sometimes have a little bit of other things going on, or Bardic Champs combined with ANS Champs, which makes me better because it's 2 for 1. But it's got really like the best people in that activity there, and also a bunch of people that are sort of the up-and-coming crowd that are very motivated and interested, and they're excited to be showing what they've learned and what they can do, and just that enthusiasm that everyone has about their specialty is really awesome. And it's nice to be able to have a day that you're focused on an activity that I wouldn't necessarily pay as much attention to when there's an event that has a lot of other things going on that I directly participate in, where I get like a whole lot of equestrian or throw weapons or archery that I'm involved in, but I'm not always stopping to admire the experts in all of those things, just doing their thing and doing it well and showing everyone that.
So my favorite event is probably going to be an event that none of you probably know about. It's called Red Dragon. It was an event back in the mid, and it was my first real event. I'd gone to a small event, like just at the tail end of it, but my first full event was Red Dragon. For me, it's still my favorite event because I remember that feeling I had when I showed up, and I was wearing garb that wasn't even really garb, it was like Regency, and they let me throw axes, and it was great. And everyone was really nice, and it was still, I had that dream with me. It was still full of sparklies. And for me, even when I think about that event and the events that event would happen year after year, it still had that like sparkliness to it because it was my first event. And so it doesn't have any quality like it had community or this or whatever. It was just the first event for me. So I think that's what I would take away from this is remembering that this boring event for you that you go to every time and like the hall's overheated, well, that's someone else's first sparkly event. And like, that's what I want to really keep, is remembering that. The dream is still alive for everyone else. And that's also really cool.
I'm a big competitive jerk. I love Kings and Queens reindeer. I love it. I'm an adrenaline junkie and getting to fight people at a very competitive level. Just, it's awesome. I freaking love it. The year that we had it at the fort on the river that was in Smoking Rocks, that site was amazing. And it wasn't just because I finaled against Donovan. That was an added bonus. But yeah, no, that site was amazing. And it reminded me of another event that was immersive like that, which was from the mid called Baron Wars, where they actually let us camp in a Revolutionary War fort, and we had a blockhouse battle where we could set up a pub and then just fight in a Revolutionary War fort blockhouse for like all afternoon, and it was great. I don't know.
Let's do it.
I was gonna say, yeah, no, like it was a great event.
All right, I'm going to end it there. Further questions can be asked on the website, but we need to be out of here in 51 minutes. So, and there's still food, and there's still mingling to be done. So thank you very much for attending. Thank you to the live stream. Thank you to our lovely candidates. You're all wonderful people. Thank you, Sarah.